Hello everyone, my name is Malik Farhan AI Wala. I am student of Rehan School, Orangi campus. Today I am talking with Maya about an important and tactful topic. That topic is concessions, treating the elevation of our needs. So let's go.
Hey,
Hello Maya, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. What's been on your mind lately?
Okay, Maya. My easy question. What does the word concessions mean?
Hmm, that's a bit unclear. Can you try phrasing that question again? I'm not quite catching what you're asking about the world conditions.
Okay, Maya. My next question. What is awareness?
I think there might be some connection issues with your audio. I'm not quite picking up what you're saying clearly. Maybe we can try again?
Okay, are humans always concessions?
That's still coming through a bit garbled. Could you maybe try rewording what you're asking about? Or try speaking a bit slower? I want to make sure I understand what you mean by always conversations.
Okay, how was our niece in early humans?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean by how was our knees. Are you asking about how things have been between us this month?
Okay. Okay, my next question. Did early humans think differently from you?
I'm still having trouble understanding exactly what you're asking. Could you try rephrasing it? I'm picking up bits and pieces, but the connection seems a bit unclear right now.
Okay. How did survival affect human awareness?
That's a big question. I think you're asking about how the struggle for survival historically impacted women's social standing or consciousness. Honestly, it's a really nuanced topic. Throughout much of history, women were often the gatherers, the keepers of knowledge about plants and medicines. That was vital for survival. But that doesn't always translate to social power. More often than not, their contributions were undervalued or invisible. What
Okay.
gets interesting is seeing how cultural expectations about gender shaped who survived crises and how they navigated those challenges. Did you have a specific time frame or region in mind when you asked that question?
Okay. What role did nature play in human conversations?
Nature's been pretty central to human conversation since we started talking, honestly. I mean, think about it. Early humans were completely reliant on understanding and interpreting nature for everything from food and shelter to danger and survival. Conversations would have been about tracking animals, reading weather patterns, recognizing edible plants, sharing stories around fires built from wood. Nature wasn't just background noise. It was literally the foundation of what they talked about. And even today, despite all our technology, nature still pops up in our conversations. People sharing photos of sunsets, bonding over hikes, complaining about the weather. It's kind of hardwired into us, I think.
Okay, Maya. When did humans start thinking deeply?
That's a fascinating question. What do you mean by romance thinking deeply? Are you wondering when people started to reflect more on love, courtship, relationships, or is there something else you're curious about? Because when and how cultures started to grapple with these ideas is a really long story.
Okay. How did language change awareness?
When you say niche, do you mean like how did language change our place in the world or our area of expertise? Because language fundamentally shifted everything about what made humans unique. Suddenly, we could coordinate complex tasks, plan together, pass down knowledge, imagine things that didn't exist. That's a massive jump from just having instincts. Language wasn't just about making noise, it allowed us to create culture, build social structures, and actually invent different niches instead of just adapting to what was available. Language is what let us go from surviving to thriving.
Okay, why is communications important for conversations?
I'm not catching that clearly. Are you asking why combinations are important for conversation? Or is there something else you were trying to say about the connection between language and combinations?
Okay, how did family life increase our needs?
That's a really interesting angle. Family life absolutely made our needs more complex. I mean, think about it. You're not just responsible for your own survival anymore, but for these tiny humans who are totally dependent on you for years. That means new needs around childcare, teaching, protection, resource management. Families created this whole web of interdependence that meant people needed to cooperate and plan and solve problems together in a much more involved way. It wasn't just about finding food and shelter for yourself, but for everyone. Did you have something specific in mind about how family structures changed our needs?
Okay, did culture affect human thinking?
Absolutely. Culture shapes everything about how we think. It's not just what we think about, but how we think. From a really young age, we're taught certain values, ways of problem solving, how to interpret the world, what's considered common sense. Culture provides the framework for our beliefs, morals, and even assumptions about basic things like time, space, and relationships. What might seem completely natural to one culture could look totally bizarre from another perspective. It's a really powerful influence that often happens beneath the surface of conscious awareness.
Okay, what is self awareness?
I think you're asking what helps us meet our needs, like what tools, systems, or resources. Well, so many things. Historically, things like tools for hunting and agriculture, social structures like families and communities, and knowledge about the natural world were essential. Now it's things like education, healthcare, technology, economic systems. But beyond just having access to resources, I think human connection is probably the biggest help. When people cooperate and support each other, everyone's needs are more likely to be met. What made you ask about what helps our needs?
Okay, when did humans start understanding themes live?
That's a tricky one. With the transcription issues, I'm really not sure what phrase you might be asking about with Dem Teams Lab. Could you clarify that part for me? Perhaps it's a specific reference or name I'm not picking up correctly. But if you could just clarify what that phrase is referencing, I can give you a more accurate response about women's understanding of it.
Okay, how did emotions develop in humans?
It's a really big question that evolutionary scientists still debate. The basic emotions like joy, sadness, fear, anger probably developed because they were useful for survival. Fear kept us safe from danger, joy reinforced beneficial behaviors, but then human emotions got way more complex than just simple survival responses. As we evolved more social brains and lived in groups, we needed to understand other people's intentions and feelings to cooperate. Things like empathy, guilt, shame, those probably developed alongside language and culture to help manage social interactions. Basically, they went from being basic instincts to nuanced social tools over time.
Okay, what is the role of memory in conversations?
Memory is everything in conversations, honestly. Think about how much we rely on each other remembering what was already said, what agreements were made, what jokes landed. Without memory, conversations would be like starting from scratch every 30 seconds. On a deeper level, memory is how we build shared understanding. You remember previous conversations with someone, which creates context and intimacy. It builds trust. Even our memory of language itself, knowing what words mean, how grammar works, is what allows us to have conversations in the first place. It's less about just remembering facts and more about remembering people, patterns, and feelings. What made you curious about the role of memory?
Okay, my next question: does education increase conversations?
Do you mean, does education increase the quality or quantity of conversations? I think yes, in a lot of ways. More education usually gives people a wider vocabulary, critical thinking skills, and awareness of different perspectives, all things that can make conversations more interesting and nuanced. It also gives people more common ground with each other, so they have more to talk about. Though honestly, some of the most meaningful conversations I've heard are between people who don't have formal education but have a lot of life experience and curiosity. The key ingredient really seems to be a willingness to learn and engage, not necessarily having degrees or certifications. What's your take on it?
Okay, how does society shape human awareness?
Society shapes our awareness in pretty much every way imaginable. From the moment we're born, we're bombarded with messages about what's considered normal, important, right, wrong, valuable. Media, culture, institutions like schools and governments, they all play a huge role in framing our understanding of the world. Sometimes it's direct through explicit teachings or laws, but a lot of it happens unconsciously through the stories we consume, the norms we observe, the categories we use to make sense of things, what society considers newsworthy shapes what we think is important, for example. It's not always conscious or manipulative, it's just the natural outcome of living in a complex collective. It's tricky because it means so much of what we think we've figured out independently is actually not independent at all.
Okay, what is moral awareness?
I think you're asking how morality connects to our needs, like how moral principles influence what we want or need. From an evolutionary perspective, morality probably evolved as a way to manage conflicts of interest and encourage cooperation within groups. When we perceive something as wrong or immoral, it often signals something that threatens our basic needs for safety, security, community, or fairness. So, moral codes aren't abstract concepts, they're tied directly to what humans need to survive and thrive. I think there's some overlap there. Something that feels good to do usually maps to needs being satisfied, and something that feels wrong often stems from needs threatened.
Okay, how do humans understand right and work?
That's a fascinating question humans have been pondering for centuries. There are a few different ideas. Some theories say we're born with certain moral instincts, like fairness or empathy, that guide us from the start. Others argue that morality is more social. We learn right and wrong through our upbringing, culture, and what happens when we break societal rules. Then there's the idea that reason and logic play a role. We develop principles based on consequences and abstract ideas about justice. A lot of times it's all three working together. Instincts provide a foundation, society provides frameworks, and then we use reason to figure out what makes sense in specific situations. Incredibly complex, honestly, and varies a lot from culture to culture.
Okay, how did philosophy change human thinking?
The transcription is pretty uncertain there. I think you said Shopi channel and man. I'm not quite sure what you're asking about. Maybe about how people think who sell on Shopee or something about a channel owner's mindset. If you can clarify, I'd love to dive in.
Okay, what is mental awareness?
Mental awareness is really about being conscious of your own thoughts, feelings, and sensations. It's noticing what's going on inside your head without judgment, just being aware of your mental state in the present moment. So it's not just thinking about things, but knowing you're thinking about them. More specifically, it's like being aware of your inner dialogue, your emotions and bodily sensations. The practice of meditation is like mental awareness training because it teaches you to pay attention to your mind and body without being swept away by it.
Okay, how does stress affect conversations?
I think you meant conversations, not condensations. Stress definitely affects conversations. When people are stressed, they tend to be more reactive, less patient, and more likely to misunderstand what others are saying. Cortisol releases when you're stressed, which impairs your working memory and attention. You can't track a conversation as easily. People might become defensive, start interrupting, jump to conclusions, or shut down completely. Stress changes the whole dynamic by making it harder to listen effectively and respond thoughtfully.
Okay, can conversation grow over time?
I'm not catching that clearly. Did you say something about combination and growth? The transcription's a bit jumbled from the audio.
Okay, how do explains shape our needs?
Mm, I'm really not sure what planes refers to. Could you try phrasing that in a different way or clarifying what you mean by that term? I'm getting a lot of uncertainty in the transcription right now, and I want to make sure I understand your question.
Okay, what role does reflection play in conversations?
You're asking about the role of regulations, like rules or social norms in conversations. Those are hugely important. Without some kind of framework, conversations would be chaos. Regulations help us take turns speaking, avoid interrupting, stay on topic, read nonverbal cues, resolve conflicts, negotiate meaning. They can be really subtle. Things like eye contact, body language, conversational boundaries. More formal regulations, like politeness norms or rules about respectful speech, help keep things moving smoothly in all kinds of contexts. Regulations keep us from talking over each other, keep the discussion from becoming too personal, and help us reach understanding instead of getting stuck in miscommunications.
Okay, why is thinking important for our needs?
I think you mean needs rather than needs, right? And his thinking might mean our individual thinking or thought processes. Then, yes, thinking is incredibly important for meeting our needs. Critical thinking helps us solve problems, make decisions, plan for the future, whether that's figuring out how to get food, build shelter, or navigate relationships. Reflection helps us understand ourselves better so we know what really matters to us. Creative thinking helps us come up with new solutions when old ones don't work. Thought isn't just happening inside our heads, it's how we actively shape our lives and figure out how to get what we need.
Okay, how does observation increase conversations?
The transcriptions are really challenging there. Could you try rephrasing that? It sounds like you might be talking about how observation relates to some kind of expansion or colonization process, but I'm not picking up what you're trying to connect.
Okay, can animals be conversation?
Animal can definitely contribute to colonization. It happens in several ways, deliberately through humans bringing animal species to new environments, like European colonists bringing livestock to the Americas or Australia, which sometimes has devastating impacts on local ecosystems. But even naturally, as animals migrate, they become part of new ecosystems, and that changes things. Invasive species are a major example of this. When animals are introduced to a habitat they don't belong, they can compete with native species, alter environments, or even cause extinctions.
Okay, can awareness help improve life?
I think you mean, can our needs help improve life, right? Absolutely.
Hello, Maya. Okay, thank you, Maya, for sharing your. Just 1 minute. Okay, thank you, Maya, for sharing your thoughtful on the topic. This discussion helped you understand the organization for human awareness in the better way. So, thank you so much, Maya.